criticizing epistemic injustice, rewarding effort to compensate for epistemic exclusion. Roberto Baldino, Antônia Cabral, State University of Rio Grande do Sul. A theoretical paper prompted by reflection on practice. In Pre-Serb 12, we reported our experience with calculus courses and received the suggestion to refer to epistemic injustice in mathematics education of Tanswell and Rittberg. In the first part, we criticized the notion of epistemic injustice in favor of epistemic exclusion and suggest rewarding effort to compensate for exclusion.
In the second part, we briefly describe how we are rewarding effort to understand in our calculus course.
As teacher researchers, we take our own classroom as our object of study and ground theory on practice. Our point is that the concerns about social victimization caused by epistemic injustice does not touch on the economic basis of exclusion. Moreover, the apparent critical ideology functions to hide the fact that economic exclusion through the school credit system continuously produces victims. The first part criticized the notion of epistemic injustice. Tanswell and Rittberg opened their case by stating two axioms. Mathematics practices are governed by norms and values, and classroom mathematics should refer to professional mathematics practices. Tanswell and Rittberg justified these statements with what they call the apprenticeship model of mathematics education. This proposition amounts to aligning the mathematics classroom to the need of reproducing the mathematician's qualified labor power, supported by the internalist view that mathematicians hold on their own practice. Since those norms and values of mathematics do not coincide with the cultural background values of students, it's necessary to negotiate and adjust the model. For this negotiation, they introduce epistemic injustice as a philosophical framework that helps reveal that to transverse the research gap, that is, the difficulties faced by mathematics education, is an ethical imperative. Tanswell and Rittberg argue that the framework of ethical orders also helps to identify the many roles that are inhabited in the mathematics classroom. The reader expects that they will not miss two paramount teacher roles, their tutoring and their summative assessment functions. Indeed, they come to the verge of recognizing summative assessment when they admit that in the classroom there is a space in which multiple roles and their associated ethical orders are present and may come into conflict. However, they do not thematize conflicts stemming from the credit system. How is it possible to look at a classroom in search of roles that could lead to epistemic injustice and fail to see summative assessment? Summative assessment decides whether the student will get credit for the course. According to the labor theory of value, value is human labor crystallized in commodities. Upon graduating, the student will be the owner of a qualified labor power of higher value, which she expects to sell for a higher salary. Therefore, school is an economic enterprise, and failing a course has economic implications. Summative assessment decides whether the student may or may not increase the value of her labor power by adding to it the work done by her during the semester.
Second part, we are rewarding effort to understanding in our calculus course. In our teaching, we adopt non-mathematical summative assessment criteria. These two are economically excluding, since the possibility of failure remains present, but there is nothing in the shadows. We reward effort to understand instead of evaluating final learning. We construct learning as representing oneself as a subject by new signifiers. The student assumes the position of speaker and ventures a new representation into the field of the other, where she must constitute herself as a desiring being. Learning is speaking in the broad sense, including gestures, hesitations, and silence. It's a restructuring of the subject's jouissance. It does not occur in vitro. It depends on a myriad of factors such as cultural background, gender, ethnicity, etc. These factors remain at work overnight. Traditionally, summative assessment only considers final learning. This method gives free course to the cultural biasing factors that work in the background to boost or hamper learning. Deciding credit by evaluating final learning is a true epistemic exclusion of those who somehow have not incorporated the implicit values of the ruling class present in the whole summative assessment situation. We conceive of understanding as the student's ability to sustain her subjective representation by a signifier. In understanding, student and teacher are publicly interacting amidst the whole class. Understanding is an objective process. It can be registered in video. In our classroom, students are required to individually justify randomly assigning quilting points in previously handed out worksheets, thereby entering an eye-to-eye, open-camera dialogue with the teachers. How much effort the student made to prepare herself for this moment becomes evident to all. How much she contributes to understand of her mates deserves a mark. Written homework is also object of collective and individual conversation. Close eye-to-eye conversation eliminates questions about the authenticity of answers. The apparently adverse circumstances of COVID-19 have provided us with an ideal environment to thrive our principle. One teaches by listening and learning by talking. Our website, our group, our university. Thank you.